I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
If you want to build a massive chest, you have to stop bench pressing right now.
Welcome to Heinz Seniors Coaching Up. Get access to the P3AK High Intensity Training ebook and its exclusive video tutorials. Commit with Heinz Coaching right now and be provided with a year of meal plans, training programs, and more. www.p3akday.com. There is no room for the littles.
RX Television on rxmuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. You know the drill. Whatever's on your mind, bodybuilding related, training related, supplementation related, whatever's on your mind in and outside of the bodybuilding world, it is all on the tables. You now bringing Dave Palumbo. Dave, busy day on our end. I know you're going to have a drop-in visit later today by Mr. G, better known to our audience from After Hours, and of course, King Kamali, good friend of the show. He's going to be joining us later on in the afternoon. But tragic occurrence yesterday, and I know we've been getting a lot of messages, and I know this is someone that you've obviously worked with in the past. Sergio Fernandez, who, rumors started to circulate as early as yesterday morning that he had passed, and then I guess as details had started to unfurl, that apparently he was a victim of a carjacking. He was in Mexico, but I know you had a relationship with him in the past. I know you had spoken to John Romano about some of the circumstances. Obviously, John very familiar with Mexico, but nonetheless a tragedy yesterday, again, in the bodybuilding world.
Yeah, Sergio was one of these guys that just loved bodybuilding. I remember meeting Sergio Fernandez for the first time in, I think it was the Latin American World Amateur Championships. It was down in Cancun. Not Cancun. It was in Acapulco, Mexico. We were live streaming it for RX Muscle, and he was in the show, and that's where I first met him. And I thought he had a good physique, and I critiqued him well, and he was, we talked a little bit, and maybe like a year later or so, he had asked me to help, diet him for a show. Matter of fact, he flew me into Brazil for the Arnold Classic Brazil, the amateur event that they had there, and I think he placed third there or something like that. And I had a really good time. We hung out and whatever, and he was very gracious and paid for everything for me, and we had it was good, good contact, and I worked with him, and I interviewed him a couple times before that, and I know he was working in, I believe it was in Mexico City. I think he was working with MD and Latino. I don't know if he was training people there or what exactly he was doing, but I understand, at least from the story I heard, that someone was trying to steal his car, and I guess he tried to stop them, which is not a good idea, obviously. Even anywhere, even if you're in the U.S., I just let him take the car. Who cares? And I think he got shot. That's what I heard, or at least I don't know how they killed him. I think it was with a gun. And I talked to John Romano about it. He told me that Mexico City is like the Wild West. Like you just there's no rules. People just do crazy shit there, and so it's a great city because it's cheap to live. There's there's a lot of opportunities there, but it's also very dangerous. And that's I think we all take our freedoms and all the great stuff that we have here in the United States for granted sometimes. When I travel outside, I realize, hey, we got the best food here. We have the best rights here. Yeah. So you got to wear a mask when you go into a hospital or a doctor's office, but that's not really the end of the world. At least you're not going to, more than likely, not going to get shot. Just walking out in public. So I want to send my condolences out to his family, friends, and terrible loss. He was just way too young.
Yeah, I just came upon an article, Spanish language articles, La Voz de Galicia. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, but just translating the article, yeah, I mean, it said there were two assailants who tried to steal his car, and I mean, even more tragic. He had a 2-month-old kid, and it was his birth. I don't know. Yeah, there must be an error in translation. It must mean 2-year-old kid, and it was his birthday.
Oh my God, terrible.
Oh my God, very tragic story. So yeah, warmest wishes, deepest condolences to the family, and I mean, legions of fans of Sergio Fernandez. I know we have been receiving messages for the last, since yesterday.
Yeah.
If we knew anything but really not much more to say other than the fact that it is a tragedy. And, man, I mean, if there's really anything we could do for his family, we'll certainly see who we can get in touch with. And we'll put that on our social media, and anything we can do to help them get through this difficult time, we'll be happy to do so.
It's terrible because of the fact that it's something that seems like it could have been avoidable. In other words, it wasn't a guy having a heart attack in a hotel room. It wasn't someone getting cancer. It wasn't, someone having a stroke. We can say, oh, what terrible luck. I can't. This guy just was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's horrible to think that it could have been any one of us, really. Like I said, don't take your freedoms in this country for granted.
Oh, man. Let's go to the questions. Of course, on this show, the first two questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question, dry, achy joints on Winstrol, says 50 ED oral. Should I add in a joint support? Thoughts on Winstrol drying out joints, or is that a myth? What could be the causes?
I know that there's probably people out there that are going to say, it's not a myth. I experienced it. I'm telling you, there's no science, but I really believe that people have problems on Winstrol because a lot of people who take Winstrol, they take it when they're super lean, 6 weeks out from a show, and that's usually when the time you're so dry because you're very carb depleted, your body's not retaining a lot of fluid, and you have no body fat in your body, and I think that's why people get joint pain. I don't want to dismiss anyone who really has joint pain from it, but there's no real reason why Winstrol should cause more joint pain than any other drug should any other steroidal drug should for that matter. Why isn't Primobolan causing it? I mean, it's almost the same. It's very, very similar drug in effectiveness. So I don't know. What I tell people to do is, number one, hydrate well. But you know what? A lot of people don't eat enough sodium prior to their diet, while they're dieting. They think that sodium is equivalent to fat, and so if they hold water, that's somehow if they don't hold water, somehow they're going to burn fat better. That's not true. Being well hydrated while you're actually dieting is actually going to be beneficial to you because it's going to help you recover. It will keep those joints more lubricated for sure. Also, likewise, eating enough essential fats are going to keep the joints lubricated. And taking glucosamine supplements in high dosages like we have in Arthrolyze, 4 grams a day, plus the 4 grams of MSM, which is a biologically available source of sulfur. That's going to keep those joints moist. Why? Because you're going to be able to create more synovial fluid with those as precursors. So it's not really so much Winstrol prior to the show that's the problem. It's the fact that you're dieting for a show, and you got to provide your body. A lot of people don't want to waste money on joint support products, which I find interesting because they'll spend money on protein supplements because they know that's going to repair muscle, and what they don't realize is that muscle really can't function well if the tendons and ligaments are weak. So why wouldn't you want to take a product that's going to help actually support joint and tendon strength and synovial fluid production? So I don't know. It behooves me.
Whose phone is going off?
Yeah, the president's calling me. Always while we have a show. He wants to he has a question. He couldn't get through to you on YouTube, so he figured he'll call direct. But he forgot his question.
Yes.
Joe Biden's memory's not so good lately, so I think he forgot his question. He hung up.
You know how to get our comment section lit up. Serge Nubret, is he not the most symmetrical bodybuilder of all, or one of, if not the most of all time? If not, who is? Surprised he wasn't mentioned on the guys to not make the... All right, this must be another translation question. I'm going to try to make the best of it. Guys to not make the Olympia, given the amazing lineup in his era, if not the greatest, one of the all-time greatest. So
he probably needs not to win the Olympia.
The symmetrical era.
I think he was one of the guys who didn't win the Olympia from his era. He probably could have won the Olympia.
Yeah, that's the discussion.
Serge Nubret was not that well liked by the Weeders because He had this. They had this like. I think that Serge, according to at least what John Hansen told me, Serge Nubret beat Ben Weider in some election they had, which was the last election they ever had, and they somehow changed the results of it. So they didn't get along that well. But Serge had a great physique for sure, very very symmetrical. I mean, Flex Wheeler was crazy for symmetrical. There was a lot of guys that had awesome symmetry throughout. I mean, I loved Francis Benfato's symmetry when he was competing, but I think that Serge Nubret could be considered one of the best, symmetrically speaking, because he really wasn't that concerned with size. He really was more concerned about keeping the proportion. Frank Zane, excellent symmetry. He wasn't the biggest guy, but he had great symmetry as well. So a lot of the, I guess, 70s, 80s era guys really focused a lot on symmetry, because I don't think that size wasn't the ultimate end-all, be-all. It was about symmetry and presentation and conditioning, and that was really what was emphasized more. The mass guys didn't come along until Haney and then Dorian, and then all of a sudden things changed a lot. But back in the 70s and 80s, that's what it was all about. The Dave Palumbo Experience app, which is what you're reading two questions from, is an app that I have. It's $29 a month. You get access to all the videos and articles I've ever written. They're always being upgraded daily. It's kind of like a library of Dave Palumbo information. We put a workout up every single week. I answer people's questions in an open forum, so you can see both the question and the answer of everyone there. And you know what? A lot of people email me all the time, for questions, and I answer pretty much everyone's questions. And they all say, "Hey, Dave, I want to pay you. I feel bad. I don't like to take advantage of it." And you know what the truth is? I don't really want to charge for that. But if you want to support the app, subscribe to the app, because then you could ask as many questions as you want on there. You're paying a little bit every month as for me to be your coach. There, you have access to me in like a library format. You can go back and look at all the questions and answers. It's a great little gift to buy for someone. It's great to give to yourself. It's not a big expense, and you know what? It gives you a good resource to be able to look up stuff when you actually need it. I have all my diets on there. Everything I've ever put together is up on that app.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Let's see some of the questions. We get a lot of questions about things that took place about 5-6 years ago. So we have this one guy, I'm not going to mention his name, but he always asks what it's going to take to get John Romano and Christian Duke to have another iron debate. And my answer to you is this, all right? That was about 6-7 years ago.
Right.
If you've been watching the channel, you've been seeing a whole new crop of budding rivalries, which have been taking place on the show called After Hours.
Right.
A few months ago, it was Big Lenny and Mr. G. Mr. G, who, by the way, is going to be in studio later today.
With all his protein products he's bringing. Protein bagels, protein cookies. He's got a whole bunch of goodies he's bringing in for Tyler and I.
And then on top of that, over the last 2 weeks, you've had this rivalry between Big Rob, who, give or take, last week it was versus Lee Priest and Jimmy the Bull, and then we're starting to get people saying, well, he got Big Lenny fired, so we had put him on the spot about that yesterday. So you're getting your fix of drama. We even have a therapist. That's in the past. That's done. I think we all need to just move on.
We even have a show therapist that comes on regularly now. Leslie,
yes,
Symbol.
You haven't seen After Hours for the last month or so. We've had her as a recurring guest, Leslie Timble. We needed her.
We needed her years ago. We finally have a therapist who's willing to participate.
I think everyone associated with the bodybuilding industry, myself included, who's not a bodybuilder, we all need a little fixing in the head, Leslie Timble, she's great. I actually met her at the Olympia, and she kind of put her services out there. She's been doing that. So on a serious though, if you're a bodybuilder, we're all going through a very weird time right now. We're all going their own personal stuff, and then everything's all going on in the world. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows for all of us. So, if that's something that you do need, we have her, at her disposal. She's pretty much put it out there for any bodybuilder that, wants her services. She's putting it out there for free for the next couple of months. So,
well, no, she's charging now. It was December was free. Now
right.
she's charging.
Still,
she's got a full book schedule. Said she's doing a lot of sessions. A lot of people found her very, very helpful, and so she does have spots open. If you watch After Hours, she gives out her phone number there, and you can get her. You can contact her through that.
And it's a very worthwhile thing for those of you that haven't taken advantage yet. But let's go to our Instagram questions again. If you're not already following us, official_RX Muscle. If you're first time watching us on YouTube, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. As always, we appreciate all the support throughout the course of the year. Let's go to Neil Zalewski, good friend of the show. Good one here, because you look at some of the pro qualifiers over the past year, and obviously I know the big name that jumps out is Carlos Thomas Jr. Any competitor or any competitors seem like they're going to be the next big thing in bodybuilding. And obviously everybody looks at, Nick Walker, right? And last year in terms of him coming onto the scene, and then obviously 2 years ago rather, and then the run that he had last year, Carlos Thomas is a big name. Is there anybody else that you see really standing out as sort of that future material?
Well, I mean, I think there's a bunch of guys in the wings right now that have turned pro recently, or will probably turn pro this year, that we're going to see really step up. I think the young guys now that are really making an impact, Brett Wilkin, which I'm really excited to see him at the Arnold Classic, see how he does. He made a big impact last year. Obviously, Hunter Labrada has been doing great, just like Nick Walker. They're top 5 at the Olympia now, so I mean they've moved up to that next rank. Even Rafa Brandeo, guys like that are really stepping up to that next level. They went from good to elite, in the open class, and I think that there's more guys on the way. But the problem is the gap between when a guy turns pro and he's ready to step onto a pro stage. There's a big gap still there. Nick Walker made a pretty good jump, but it did take him a year to do that, which is faster than most guys do. But he didn't turn pro so easily. So I think by the time he did turn pro, he was ready to be a pro. And some of these guys are turning pro, and they're just kind of skating by. They have the potential to be great pros, but they haven't really grown into their physique yet. There's a lot of those guys in the wings right now, and I've interviewed them for the show. You guys have seen it. I'm not going to name names. I don't want to put the jinx on anyone, but I think that we have, I'd say, at least 4 to 5 really good guys that will be the next generation. Within the next 2 years, they're going to take over and start winning shows.
So, Dave, I'm actually going to throw in another name because this next question transitions in perfectly. Michael Krizo, Slovakian bodybuilder. Now, I'm not 100% sure if he has transitioned into the IFBB or if he plans on competing in the IFBB, but he is someone that I know other media outlets have mentioned him. And, of course, during the time of the Olympia, look, he was putting himself out there on social media, and many people started to make the natural comparison, him versus Big Ramy, him versus Nick Walker. Mm-hmm. He had some comments after Nick Walker won the Arnold Classic as well. I don't know if you've really gotten a chance to. I know I sent Tyler the link to his Instagram.
Yeah, we're playing right now.
If he does transition in the IFBB, what do you think his prospects are? Do you think he could be someone that could, go right to the top and challenge the likes of a Big Ramy, Brandon Curry, Nick Walker?
No, but I think he in the future certainly can. He's got a ton of muscle. This guy. I mean, he's got the great showy body parts. Arms, shoulders, pecs, he's got flaring, lats, he's got good legs. I think that, he's a year or two off from really being, amazing, but I think he's certainly there's no doubt he's got the tool set to be at the top. Will he come over here? I don't know. I'm sure Raphael has got him, or whoever he competes. I think he competes in the elite over there. Or I don't even know if he even has an elite pro card yet. I think he's still just a Russian champion, right? From what I understand.
To be very honest with you,
I think I had this discussion with someone. Yeah. We had this discussion already. He's not even like a pro yet, theoretically. So I hope he comes to the IFBB Pro League because that's the best. And I think that he will make a big splash in this division initially, right away, because he's got the size to stand with these guys. I think, in terms of refining what he had, kind of like what Ramy had going on. When Ramy first came in, he was unbelievable, but he still had a lot of refining to do. I think once he refines what he's got, I think it's going to take another year or two. He's going to be very dangerous. Absolutely. He'll be competing at the top Olympia level.
Let's go to Serge at Arms. There appears to be this new theory on drug protocols running the safer, less androgenic compounds longer and increasing dosages as you go versus the older school ways of more androgenic compounds while harsher side effects for shorter periods. Your thoughts?
I always laugh when I see the new protocol, or when the people say, "Oh, we're going to be doing daily subcutaneous, injections and stuff like that." And everyone always thinks they can find out a better way to do stuff. The bottom line, steroids have been around a long time, and because these compounds have been around a long time, we kind of figured out how they work best. When you start increasing like DECA too much above like testosterone, or trenbolone above testosterone, you get a lot of side effects. Prolactin goes up. and then prolactin causes, erectile dysfunction, Testosterone is the most anabolic and most androgenic compound in the same compound. And so you get the most bang for your buck. It's also the cheapest out there, and it's probably the least faked compound out there, as we found out, unfortunately, through George Peterson's autopsy. So why would you not use the most powerful compound that you can to build muscle? And your body produces that naturally, so it's not like it produces very much toxicity at all. The only thing you'd have to worry about with testosterone is aromatization to estrogen, which a lot of these other compounds do anyway. And of course, and because there's no liver toxicity, and maybe it might raise your blood pressure if you take too much of it, but from fluid retention. But nothing will replace testosterone. The biggest, thickest, densest guys on stage take a nice base of 1,000 to probably God knows how much testosterone per week, and then they add their anabolics on top of that, whether it be Deca or Masteron or Trenbolone or EQ, which is Boldenone. I mean, those that's what testosterone's combined with. And we're going to talk about this on After Hours later, but the George Peterson autopsy showed that he didn't really have a lot of steroids in his system. He had only testosterone, a little bit of Winstrol, and some equipoise that was probably lingering from 2 months ago, which means that a lot of the compounds he was using were fake, and they were all testosterone, and he looked amazing. So what people don't realize is that I've seen guys compete on just testosterone, and they look freaking amazing. So why would you take away the strongest thing that you could possibly use in your body to build muscle and decrease it? And then try to overcompensate with something that sounds a little more exotic because on paper it doesn't aromatize as much or whatever, But nothing is safer really than testosterone, unless you're going to use very small dosages of stuff. But we're talking about guys that are trying to build mass. If you're trying to build mass and density and 3D look to your body, you need testosterone.
Good question here, relevant to what you were just talking about, and really relevant to really the ongoing conversation about George Peterson. It's from Lag No Excuses. You're always talking about how one needs to go for blood work on a regular basis, but after your report on George Peterson's death and seeing that his blood work was fine, does blood work really matter? So if you could expand upon, I guess, the benefits and what else needs to be done in addition to getting regular blood work.
Yeah. That's like saying that, well, the guy, you shouldn't get a colonoscopy because this guy died and it wasn't colon cancer or something like that. That doesn't. What does one have to do with the other? What if he did? What if you do have colon cancer growing and you didn't get the colonoscopy because you figured it wasn't going to do anything because Joe Blow died of a heart attack or Joe Blow. You got to check everything because you don't know what's going on in your body. There's certain things you check. There's certain blood tests that will tell you if your kidney function, is no good, if your creatinine is too high, or if, your white and red blood cells are off and maybe you're anemic, or maybe you have leukemia or something like that, or, your cholesterol levels are too high, your LDLs, and you're at a threat or at risk for coronary artery disease. To say not to get blood work is ridiculous. George, and the reason why I did that long analysis of his autopsy is because he was pretty healthy and everything did come back pretty normal. So that's why I was a little upset with the fact that the coroner dismissed it and made up this he had an arrhythmia and it was probably caused maybe in part by anabolic steroid use. Was that right? It might be, but there was really no proof to indicate that. They didn't find anything that's definitive for that. So that's the only reason I said it. That's not a reason why you shouldn't do blood work just because George Peterson had good blood work. I mean, it's moronic. I mean, you got to get your colonoscopy. You got to get your cardiac CT scan to see if you have vessels. As a matter of fact, a very good friend of mine, I'm not going to mention his name, I don't know if he wanted me to, he was going to go do some fight training, and he said, after hearing all your health videos you do, I went and got a cardiac CT scan, and I got a blockage. They want to do an angiogram on me now. They say I might need a stent. This guy was exercising at such an elite level, you would never in a million years believe he had a blockage. God forbid he went to Thailand and was training for this fight and had a heart attack and died. So you got to do your diagnostic testing. And there's not that many things that you really need to do. You do your blood work, every 6 months to a year, if you're healthy. You do your colonoscopy every whatever. I think I got one. I don't have to wait to get one for 10 years because I was clear. Some people who have family history, they'll do it more frequently, maybe every 5 years. Cardiac CT scan every 3 to 5 years. You should do that. See how your vessels are doing. These are simple things that you can do. I think that everyone should get a thyroid, an ultrasound of their thyroid, because I didn't know I had a thyroid cancer in there. That was just, I found it incidentally through a cardiac CT scan they did. They just kind of saw the bottom of my thyroid and they caught it. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt to get a thyroid scan, once every 5 to 10 years just to see how that's doing. So to be like, well, I don't need to get tests because they don't necessarily show anything. Well, what if they do show something and it saves your life? So don't be dumb.
Interesting one here is from Big Ron, not Big Rob, Big Ron Athletic Body. We get a lot of questions about GH, when to take it, how to take it. This one is about what mistakes can be made when you take GH. What should be considered in order to achieve optimal results? And then I guess in your own experiences, what are some of the things that people could do to avoid some said mistakes?
Well, the first thing you can do if you're going to use GH is test your GH and make sure it's real. The reason I say that more so with GH than anything else, I think you should test anything you put in your body. And I sell these Roy test kits on DavePalumbo.com. You can make fun of them all you want or think I'm putting forth a sales pitch here, but the bottom line is that George Peterson should have tested his stuff, just like a lot of guys out there should test their stuff, because a lot of you guys are being fooled. You're being robbed. You're using compounds that are really not what you think they are. If you're lucky, they're testosterone. If you're not lucky, you're doing nothing. And I'll tell you, at least 50%, maybe more of the GH out there is fake. And I know this because when people buy a GH testing kit on DavePalumbo.com and then they go and they send me the results, because no one sends me the results when it's good, when it shows one line. They always send me the results when it comes up fake, 2 lines on the dip test, and because they want me to validate it. And I'm like, that's 2 lines. Even if it's a faint line, it's 2 lines, and that's no good. So I see a lot of fake, results, and that just tells me, number one, that there's a lot of fake GH out there, and we don't even know if it's dosed properly. So there could be GH out there that's actually real GH, but it could be underdosed. So having said that, assuming you have real GH, back in the day we would use 2 to 3 IUs a day, and that was adequate. Having said that, if you're not getting pharmacy grade GH, in other words, it's not like a name brand GH like Lilly or Serono, you're probably using something Chinese, generically related, in which case it probably is not dosed properly. So probably 4 or 5 IUs per day might be a better way to go, especially if you're not paying a fortune for this stuff. I would start lower. If you're getting carpal tunnel syndrome, where you're getting like the tingling in your fingers, that's a good sign. It means it's probably real. And if you get that, a lot of times you have to cut back the dose a little bit. So you don't want to take too much because it could cause, once again, the numbness in the fingers, and that's just because you're getting swelling around this carpal tunnel here. It's not really like you're getting carpal tunnel, you're just getting swelling in that area. People, if you take too much, you can have high blood sugars. So if you start testing your fasting blood sugars in the morning when you wake up and they're over 90 or even approaching 100 or over, that's a problem. And that could be caused by GH. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use GH. It just means that now you have to address high blood sugar, which means you're probably going to need to take a long-acting insulin. We've talked about that before. Walmart sells Novulin N, which is a long-acting insulin. It's $25 a bottle. You don't even need a prescription for it if you're in the United States. And you can get that, and you can supplement that. We can do that. I'm not going to talk about that whole protocol right now. So blood sugar you want to check. Obviously, you want to check to make sure you're not getting anything with the hands going on or tingling in the hands. And obviously, some people retain a lot of fluid if you take too much of the stuff too. So you don't want to get turned into a bloated mess. Remember, your liver, when it sees that GH in your bloodstream, it takes the GH. Well, it doesn't take the GH. The GH tells the liver to release IGF-1 essentially, and the IGF-1 gets released, and that's the growth component of GH. So GH really doesn't have a growth component in and of itself. It's creating this, or telling the liver to create IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor, which is then the growth component. So how much your liver can produce of this IGF-1 is limited. So if you think taking 20, 30, 40 IUs of GH a day, which would probably cost you a fortune, is ludicrous, okay? You probably won't grow very much more. You're just going to get a lot more side effects because your liver can only produce so much IGF-1 in response to GH, just like your testicles can only produce so much testosterone in response to taking a shot of HCG. It's the same way. You can take all the HCG you want, but if your testicles can't keep up with the demand that the HCG is asking for, then you're gonna have you're gonna hit a peak at a certain point, and that's all that you're gonna grow. So number one, check your GH, make sure it's real. Okay. Number two, figure out the right dosage. Okay. Number three, check your blood sugar so we're not getting side effects that are going to affect you long term down the road. And I think if you do that, it's a pretty safe compound.
Take one more. I generally like to, end with these questions that allow you to tap into your philosophical beliefs about bodybuilding, from your career to your coaching. The question is from Aesthetic Nutrition. What advice would you have for clients that just cannot stick to diet, meal plan anymore, no matter how many times they try? So I would take it a step further, because then they're sort of at a crossroads, right? They're at an intersection where they're either going to be committed to doing, what their coach is telling them to do. They're either going to be committed to, pursuing bodybuilding, which is going to require that kind of discipline, or they're not. What, in your experience, have you told your clients that have been in that kind of a situation?
Recently, I've been sending him to Leslie for therapy, and Leslie has helped a bunch of them, deal with binging behavior, eating disordered behavior, maybe not being able to focus on their diet, even though they claim that they want to lose the weight. A lot of it's emotional and psychological. A lot of bodybuilders get into, or a lot of people get into bodybuilding because they're trying to, overcome some kind of an emotional incident that's happened in their life, whether they lost a parent or a loved one, or maybe they were just never treated well, or or told that they were not worth anything when they were younger, and that's still lingering in their brain someplace. So, everyone has their own problems. We all do. And anyone who says they don't have any problems is full of crap. Okay, so don't think that you're the only one. So therapy helps, to a certain degree, but also some people are just lazy, and some people have trouble committing. I'm the kind of person that when I commit to something, there's there could be a tornado around me. There could be bullets being fired past my head. I will not stop, and I'll get to the gym, and I'll get the workout in, and I'll eat the food, and that's just the way my personality is. But not everyone is wired like that. So, hopefully the coach is encouraging to a certain degree, but you can bring a horse to water, you can't make it drink. It's the old saying, and that's really the client has to really want it. I have a girl I work with. She's always up and down, and she's absolutely, when she's in shape and she's on track, she loses weight fast. She's a beautiful girl, and then she can go the complete opposite direction. But that's, I can't control that. I can only be there for her when she's wanting to be helped, and when she's wanting us to follow what I'm telling her to do. A lot of times it's not the diet that's too difficult. It's just the whole process that people just can't commit to, or they see themselves as so far gone that they see the process going to be taking so long that they can't wrap their head around the fact that it's going to take them 5 months to get back in shape. Guys, 5 months goes like that. Start. Just get on the program, and don't worry about what you're going to look like when you're finished. Worry about tomorrow. Worry about in a week from now, how am I going to look? Small incremental steps, baby steps. If any of you guys have seen that movie, What About Bob? I'm dating myself. It was with Bill Murray. Great movie, and Richard Dreyfuss. Watch it. Baby steps. You got to take baby steps, and that's the answer to the question. Don't overwhelm yourself with your goals. Small steps.
I guess that's where I'm coming from on this, Dave, because we've often talked about, look, we are in a different era now than when you used to bodybuild, right? Now there is a lot more instant gratification that takes place, right? And obviously social media has a large role to play in that. I'm sure you've dealt with clients where it just seems as if, and put aside maybe traumatic events in their life or things just not being where they need to be, it could just be a matter of sheer laziness. It could just be a matter of, I'm not achieving what I thought I'd be achieving now, and I just really don't see this playing out. What have you told clients who are at that juncture, to the point where you have to pretty much tell them, like, look, you're either going to be committed to this, you're either going to aspire to be a bodybuilder, or you're not?
If you're not going to commit to the process, then don't waste your time. That's what I tell them. Because at the end of the day, look, I have people that have the worst genetics of all time, that have physiques that you're like, oh my God, how terrible. But they commit to the process. They follow what I tell them to do to the T. And they have this unwavering faith in what I'm telling them and in the process. And you know what? They achieve miracles. They change their physique. It's science. It's a science experiment. It's so easy. This is not like brain surgery we're doing here. This is it would be like if you got this very complex, entertainment center that came in the mail in a box in a million pieces, but you had the directions there, and you follow those directions exactly the way they are, okay? Assuming they didn't leave out a few pieces, which always happens when these when these things are delivered. Assuming they didn't leave out any pieces, you're going to put together the most magnificent, entertainment center of all time. The problem is that you have to trust that those directions are going to be accurate and that you're going to get the results that the directions are telling you. If I'm your coach and I'm giving you the directions, you trust that I know what I'm talking about, just follow what I'm telling you and do it. It's only, look, most diets are 16, 18 weeks. It's a very short time period in your life, okay? You have your whole life to do whatever you want and eat whatever you want. Make the small sacrifice so that you can change the way you look, and that's going to change the way you think and the way you feel about yourself, and it's going to teach you how to eat properly so that you're never going to look like that again. And so, some people go to college for 4 years or 8 years or longer. What's 16 weeks out of your life? I always look at it, I'm like, I could be in a hospital bed sick with some kind of terminal disease, or I could be, in jail someplace, This is voluntary. Just do it, If you don't want to do it, then don't do it. It's a personal decision, and I can't make that decision for you. I can only give you the tool set to do what you want or what you claim you want to do. The choice is always yours.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder, right now on the channel, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio, last night's episode of After Hours, and coming up this week, obviously, Dave with Lee Priest, King Kamali stopping by, as well as Mr. G live in studio. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. See you next week.